counting against URD. Does that make
That's
sense?
right. Yeah, it does, yeah. So if we pass the supplemental and before this gets turned into the budget that's sent to to the URA commission to get adopted as the 24, I will change this 420 to the 350 number.
Okay. I don't think to increase our budget to 425 for next year is appropriate.
Okay, the only reason the 425 is there is because in the past, and it hasn't changed yet, is that the URD covers the expenditures in economic development, but also in the memo, I put in there something about a phase out thing, so like maybe FY 24 covers 80% of the cost, then 25 is 60% and 40%, but then again, that's something that has to be decided by the commissioners if the phase out is even something they want to do. So I had to leave the 425 in there because it's working on the same scenario that's been happening as far back as I can see in the budget, which is that the URD just covers the expenditures in the economic development department.
Okay. I just can't support that. So just because we've always made the mistake doesn't mean we need to continue to make
Totally
the
agree.
mistake, so.
But I think I felt like we had to do the things in the order,
Sure, I get it.
so.
Thank you.
Question? So we're talking about 425 budgeted. Are we really gonna spend the 775 this year? What is the status of that community park project?
Yeah, we just got the invoice was this week and I think it was 773. It's really close to the 775.
Okay,
So,
what are we doing there? Because I haven't seen anything happen there yet.
Jerry?
They're moving in, they're getting ready, you'll see, I think, there'll be a social media post. Jim?
Yeah, the Parks or Public Works Operations Supervisor Jeff Snyder sent over the information this week, so we'll be putting information out about the closure, which will be from roughly June 1st, and it will be intermittent until July 3rd.
Okay, this is the whole park or just the restrooms while we rebuild them? Or?
The whole park will be closed,
But not the entire time.
not the entire time, just as they're doing construction, just to keep our public safe, so it'll just be,
Okay.
and we'll keep the community, up on that.
Commissioner Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We were talking about Highway 99 bridge before. I know the numbers at 425 were confusing. I want to go back to the bridge. Maybe my colleagues recall things differently, but I don't recall putting a stop to the project. Jerry had mentioned, you mentioned something, we didn't have the funding we thought we had. Can you explain what that means and why weren't we alerted to
I
this?
cannot explain that to you, I just know that when the project came in up to $3 million, depending on, it was around $3.5 million, depending on what we wanted to do. When it came back, I was told that we had $425,000 or $450,000 to spend on it. So we didn't stop the project, but we were gonna, I think, have a meeting and have a work session or something to get you update, maybe to figure out how to fund it a different way, see if you still wanted to go, but I don't think we ever got around to having
Okay.
that.
Okay. All right, thank you for now.
Did
Thank
that
you.
answer your question?
I think so, for now anyway, yeah, thank you. And I did look at the memo, but I mean, we got it 3.5 hours before this meeting, so I haven't had time to digest the whole thing yet.
Commissioner Patton.
Yeah, so I guess piggybacking on the question about the funding for all this stuff, I have been trying to piece the pieces of the puzzle together as to where that money, because it was mentioned that there was money saved from refinancing the loans. Perhaps that money with the council was told that, and this was before I was on council. So this is all stuff that I pieced together before I was actually on council, because I just am interested. Apparently, maybe some of that money was actually not as free and clear to be used for projects as it was. My suspicion is that the URA is going to have a separate meeting as the URA. And then at that meeting is when we will hash all that stuff out for next year's budget or a supplemental budget or something along those lines. But my question regarding this budget is, and I may have missed something, if you look at the urban renewal, this is on page 6 in the PDF or 4 in the document, it shows interest fiscal year 21 was 22,000, it was 21,000 the next year, 18,000 the year after that, and now it's proposed for 2024, the interest to be $101,000. That is a huge increase.
Right.
Are the loans variable interest, or
No.
what is that increase attributed?
That increase is 100% due to the balance in the LGIP account is just going up drastically.
What does that mean?
There's $52 million in the LGIP account, and the interest it earns is allocated across departments.
So LGIP stands for Local Government Investment Pool. It's a,
Oh, this is interest that we're getting, this is not interest we're paying.
That's
Right.
right.
Oh, well, I'm not nearly as agitated as I
There you
was
go.
when I saw that number, so that's great, thank you. I do see now it's in revenue, holy cow, I apologize.
And are we doing
it's a good problem
urban
to
renewal
have.
or? I'm not on the speaker. He's
Okay,
on the computer, I'm on paper. I don't know what it is, so I don't know.
yeah, it would have been, I believe in your document, Counselor Hens, or Commissioner
Oh,
Hensley,
page
it's
4, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, sorry, thank you.
Any other income questions, Commissioner Patton?
No, that was the only one I got in yellow.
Commissioner Varwick?
Yeah, so going back to the community park and the overage on the budget, the 350, it's almost a double.
Yeah.
So for that overage, does that need to go before the URA commission for an approval?
Yes.
Okay, so we can't just move that money over, so is this, how can we approve this budget if the URA commission has not approved that overage yet?
Good question. I think there's supplemental things. I mean, you could approve this budget and then we can make the change after the URA does the supplemental budget. I can make these changes before this budget comes back in front of the URA for the adopted budget.
Okay. So we're being asked to approve a budget that isn't gonna be the actual budget,
I'm not
It's a
sure.
proposed budget.
proposed
Yes.
budget, but
So the budget committee approves it agency budget committee approves it,
recommends it.
recommends for approval.
So you can recommend that change be made.
okay, all right. So if we move to recommend the budget,
We'll
we'll
just have to have
rotate
a
it
UR
with the
meeting
change there.
before we approve this.
Which we do on the second meeting of June every time.
Okay, thank you. That answers the question I had.
Commissioner Banks?
Yeah, I was just gonna add that we've done that in the past, that we budget things that have not been approved. We anticipate that we've done that, but we did the community park budget last year, it hadn't been approved yet, but we wanted to.
They answered my question well, thank you.
I just want to say in the memo, so last meeting, there was a question whether the overage on community park could be paid with park SDCs. I got a hold of our city engineer and he said there's absolutely no way to use the park SDCs to do the overage. So just so everyone's aware, the overage would have to come from the general fund,
That's what I was wondering.
unappropriated fund balance. Can't use the park SDCs.
So that'll bring some questions up at the URA, not for here, but be prepared for those questions. I think those questions will come up of why.
Right, I just wanted to answer the
I
question
appreciate
from
this.
last time and it's in the memo to explain. So, yeah, onto the debt sheet, if no one else has any questions. All that's showing on there is the $4.7 million worth of tax revenue coming in, $100,000 of interest revenue, and then the debt payments. We have one principal payment during the year and then 2 interest payments. And then there's the transfer to the general fund, the URA general fund, to cover all of the expenditures on that sheet.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if Commissioner Davis has any questions at all.
Well, I was gonna ask that, will he have a hand up like on council meetings?
I know he had some questions tonight, but I don't know if he got.
Commissioner Davis, do you have any questions?
You're on mute, Counselor, for Commissioner Davis, if you're trying to say something.
His hand come up like on council.
This is what Chi-Chi
There
was like.
I don't have any questions.
I think he does on the city budget though.
We're not there yet, no, okay. I didn't wanna leave you out,
Thank you.
okay.
So before we go from here, I just want to Did you guys recommend that I change the 420 due to economic development in the FY 2023 column to 350? Is that a recommendation for next budget?
I don't know if we need to do that as a motion, but it would certainly be a recommendation for me.
Well, I think you could do it by consensus if you're willing to do so.
So that it matches the city budget,
Yes.
I think so, I recommend that.
So just,
The number should match, I would think.
just for clarification, so about changing the proposed FY 23 projected number from 420 to 350 to match the budget.
That's right.
Would that enable us to dedicate that 70,000 somewhere else?
Yes.
Can we put it back into that bridge?
Wherever it gets voted to go.
Which decision under renewal agency not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, and this committee is able to remove funds from a line item, then it would be the purview of this committee to put that fund, those saved funds in any line they so choose.
I think Oregon budget law says that you guys are able to strike funds and reduce them, but not add them.
Oh, see, there you go, I'm wrong again, thank you for letting me know.
I said I think.
It's all right, I'm going for 3, give me one more, give me another 10 minutes. So now, what are we recommending changing, which one, the, for what?
FY 23 projected.
Economic development.
Second line item in materials and services.
I'll find it eventually.
So if we do that, then does that add 70 to our
Page 6
ending
for you.
fund balance then?
That's right.
I'm fine with it.
I just want to do what you guys want and bring it back as correct as possible for the adoption. Yeah, that's what I mean. I just don't want to make a change without them telling me they're recommending it.
So Joe, are you recommending it's just a consensus recommendation, or do you
Well,
want,
if
it'd be better for us to actually have a
You could
motion?
even just say as amended or as proposed, because the vote is really to recommend it. So you can recommend it with this change. Got it.
Back in the day when we took away that, like the decade budget, remember, we pulled it away, but then we gave it back the next year.
Okay.
Yeah, we have,
Making-
we have
Why
increased
we
budget
couldn't,
lines
yeah.
in the past, we have.
Yes.
And there was a time years ago when we increased the budget for the TV station.
So why can't we just?
Because we were just told.
Is this part of discussion, committee discussion, or are we done with the budget?
I got one more thing, I have one more thing. The 775 that's in community park, do you guys want me to, are you recommending that I change that to 425? And then we figure out the transfer from the city? Or do you want me to leave it at 775?
My preference would be to remove it and leave it at what was budgeted.
If we've already signed or gotten the invoices though, don't we have to match what's actually gonna happen here?
Because the city general fund can pay the difference.
It's city general fund?
City
Okay.
general fund can pay the difference.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, if the city council decided to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody has to pay for it.
Commissioner Hensley.
Thank you. I was waiting for my turn. Just trying to be patient, but you weren't seeing me. Anyway, thank you, I appreciate that. Didn't you just say, Eric, that SDCs could not be used?
That's right. We would have to use the general fund, unrestricted fund balance instead of SDC funds.
Okay,
Now,
we can ask the city council for that, are we? Okay.
Commissioner Patton.
and this is one reason why I asked that question, is because my suspicion was that with as restrictive as SDCs are, that it can be used to pay an invoice for a new infrastructure, but it cannot be used to reimburse another section once that expenditure has been paid. That's, I had a suspicion that we would not be able to do it that way. That's why I asked that question.
This project doesn't expand capacity in any way.
Well, it does, but it's already been technically paid for by another fund, and we can't, this money is not going to pay for the bathrooms directly, it would be going to pay back an entity that has already paid for those bathrooms. That was my suspicion.
Did we check to see if ARPA funds were eligible? Can we use ARPA funds for the difference?
You can.
That's part of another discussion for the city.
Yeah, the ARPA funds will come into discussion, sure.
I am still trying to find that.
It was on my
That's a
page
city
5,
council
so it's probably your
decision
page
as
6.
We requested 110,000, I think, of ARPA funds for the water line and sewer work with that. But we haven't had the meeting yet.
I just think it's a bigger discussion than what we can have tonight. I mean, it's a huge overage that we're just gonna throw on the urban renewal agency and say, cover it.
Well, but so, that's part of this conversation. You know, so I guess my question, Eric, are the funds there in the general fund? Would you call it the unrestricted fund?
Restricted,
Yeah. Is that money there?
There is money there, but yes.
Okay, and how much of us, does that impact us for other things that fund may be used for?
I can't pull the fund balance in the general fund right now. And I'm not suggesting that you guys do this, but I'm just trying to wrap up what you guys are doing. So if you need information for making this decision, just let me know what it is and I'll get it together. And we can leave it at the 775 for now.
And the Urban Renewal Agency, when it meets, will make the final decision on their budget. So this is a recommendation that has to be done by law, but the recommendation doesn't have to be exactly followed. And so the Urban Renewal Agency can have a further discussion, especially if they're doing a supplemental budget as well.
And that might be the best thing, right, is just to leave this as is now and let that be an urban renewal agency discussion, because I think it's gonna take a lot longer than.
Yeah.
Than it is.
So are we starting a new parking lot then, or?
We can start an urban renewal agency parking lot, not a budget parking lot, but we're gonna have an urban renewal agency meeting to talk about it.
I have a question for the community out there that are watching, and I'm gonna go to Jerry. What was the biggest problem for the overage? Time, delay?
I don't believe there was an overage, that was our estimate, it's just, that's what got budgeted the year before. Does that make sense? So I
Cost of
guess.
labor and materials.
So yeah, I guess to say, exactly, the year it took from budget to get this going, everything got inflated so bad, that's why it got so expensive.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, it's good to see you. It is not uncommon for us, knowing that we've got a big project, to budget part of it in one year and then budget the rest of it in subsequent years or whatever, correct?
It's been really common lately, on this because of how long it takes to get materials.
Okay, so,
Generators and dump trucks and all that takes forever, so this is a kind of the new common.
I guess my question is then, is the 425 is still there for community park, correct?
From last year?
Still there.
Sorry, it's funds that basically are still identified for that project, okay?
Yep.
So we're increasing it by 300,000 or whatever
Yes,
to meet that 775 number,
that's correct.
350,000, okay?
So 425 from last year's, this current year, and you're
Right.
proposing that the difference is coming from next year's budget?
Yeah, from the 2024.
Well, we already have done $100,000 earmarked for that project,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not double the
No.
cost, right? So,
Yeah.
it's gonna actually be 875 altogether, right?
Good grief.
The bathrooms won't even be built for 6 months. That's
So-
how.
And we talked about that a long
When
time
we
ago.
signed the contract,
Yeah.
when you signed the contract there, they ordered them, they were saying it was 6 months before we even received those, so this makes it extremely difficult on everyone.
Commissioner Barber.
Yeah, so I guess that goes back to the question, the SDC questions, if you can't reimburse a fund that's already paid the invoice, these invoices haven't been paid, right? So it's not reimbursing an
I
invoice.
believe the check run happened today.
Are you kidding? Oh my God.
And I don't think the issue, Kurt did not tell me that the issue was that the URD was paying and the city couldn't use the SDC funds because the URD paid. It was something to do with what you said about increasing capacity or whatever. It was like the park was already there and we're just rehabbing the park, so that doesn't qualify for SDC funds.
Are we talking about the check for, you mean paying Canby X for community park?
For community park.
No, Eric, I'm not aware of that being any invoicing yet on that.
Have you
I
received
saw
it?
it this week,
For how much?
773, I think.
Michelle.
I have a question more about the process, like, so if we knew it was over budget, like, were the committee members, like, so you guys were talked to about it, so you knew ahead?
No.
It's fine. Overages happen.
We knew that this snake was coming.
And we think the 100,000 is gonna cover for sure next year, it's like, that's anywhere close to enough, like, just knowing it's hard to get anything right now, right?
I guess that's a question, Jerry, like, are we price locked where we're at now? Now it's just a matter of,
I'm really confused on the payment, Eric. Can you confirm that?
Of course.
I think that needs to be confirmed before we say anything, because that's the whole, I just have never had a project happen like that fast, pay them before they start. It's always been, they always do a request on what they've spent, and they haven't, maybe they would request the funds for the bathroom or whatever they've ordered, so they have it, but to request the whole amount is very odd to me, and for that to be approved, that would have to be approved by the city administrator or someone. So I don't know if Joe or Venus seen it. If we could confirm that, Eric, just to make
Yeah,
sure, I think we're all right.
absolutely.
The other thing is too, is the other part of the SDC portion of this, is that we could use SDC funds for this, but we would have to amend it before January 1. So to do that because we haven't even finished the SDC methodology for the Parks Master Plan. So if we did that, there is a potential if you wanna do it, but it's gonna be extremely difficult to get all that done by that time. But I just wanted to add that out there, but right now with the current SDC methodology, it's not eligible for either reimbursement or improvement as Parks SDCs. And we also have the dog park funds still available in this budget cycle too, that was general fund money. I just want to throw that out there. I'm not recommending anything. I'm just telling you that there's that 900,000, I think it was in there, that's in this budget that we've spent some out of.
in my opinion, I think before we make a decision or approve a projected budget for this piece, I would like to know where the restricted fund balance is at. And then if we pull the money from there, what does that potentially set us up for? And I would even be curious if it became a 50-50 split, 50% from the urban renewal district and then 50% from
general fund. I just have real concern about taking that whole chunk out of the general fund budget.
Right.
I know that there's also heartburn about using the urban renewal district as well, so.
Okay.
So are we changing this 775 number in here, or are we leaving it?
My understanding is leaving it.
That's what I'm asking for now until I get that information.
We have a UR parking lot now, apparently.
Well, I mean, but that, no, because the UR parking lot would be for, that would be for this meeting. Once we approve or whatever this thing, the parking lot is demolished.
Well, as Commissioner Chair Barwick said, it's a UR parking lot. We'll have to discuss the funding at
Okay.
a UR meeting.
Renewal agency.
So that's something you're filing away in your internal parking lot to bring up to that parking lot. Sweet, okay.
We have a parking jam now.
Because the last thing I wanted to say was for people to say, us get through this process and then say, well, what about that parking lot? And now we've approved this and we've moved on. I don't want someone to feel like they've been like left out, like they've missed something. So I
Well, remember,
want,
you're composed as the budget committee tonight, so you're recommending
Correct.
to the urban renewal district agency. So there's still the urban renewal agency that has to approve this budget.
yes,
We approve it when we have to switch hats again.
yes.
So this is, yeah, a recommendation, and then Commissioner Chair Barwick's parking lot, we'll talk about it in that meeting.
On a timing note, does the URA meet to talk about this before June 30th? Because the supplemental has to be done by then.
Have to, yes, so I'll make
Yeah.
it work, we'll get together and figure it
Okay.
out.
Okay.
That it?
Wow.
Any discussions? You gotta have had some,
We had, yes.
plenty. Well, I think a discussion item, I think, in my opinion, is the logging or the Malala Bridge or the logging bridge, whatever you wanna call it, cause it's been a 15-year topic of conversation. I know the cost overrun, or part of that, and Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, was the staircase trying to come off one side of it on the Fred Meyer side was driving the cost of that astronomically.
It was, I think that was Jamie, do you remember 450? 650, 650,000.
Just for that,
Just
kind
for
of
the
stairwell.
walkway, and they put together prices for all the different options for a decision, and it had all kinds of stuff to choose from, up to, was it 3 million? That's a while since we looked at it.
It's been a while since we've looked at it. I think it was about 3 million. I think the painting itself was significant, like almost 2 million for just rehabbing it and painting it.
Yeah.
Because it's been so long since it's
Yeah,
been
it's gotta
done.
be sandblasted and then, there's a whole lot of,
So sandblaster.
Well, and the other problem is because it goes over the railroad, they need to extort us for the money to build a fancy cover for the train track, so a drop of paint doesn't land on their precious locomotive.
2 railroads.
Yeah,
and
there you
ODOT
go.
highway.
Yeah.
well, don't forget ODOT in that conversation either.
Yeah.
Love ODOT.
The project hasn't been like stopped, it's just held up, and we need to revisit it, we really do. We have all the engineering concepts, prices, and all that ready to go.
We have $0, so it seems soft.
Yeah.
We can have that discussion later, also.
So,
Well, so that conversation about all those URA projects is coming up on it should be.
we just had it.
Just had it.
Yeah.
What?
We didn't talk about it.
Well, we didn't discuss any of these projects.
That was on the agenda.
I was under the impression that was just initially to give us an update on what money was available or not, and then we were gonna have another discussion on all those individual projects.
I'd go back and double check the agenda, but
The original, that meeting was supposed to be for discussion of the projects. It turned out different than what it was originally.
we got the update and that was supposed to be part of that
Well,
conversation.
when we get done with this and I put my URA hat on, I'm gonna be sending an email.
Commissioner Patton or Mayor, or Commissioner Hodson, the project has just been on hold, but I wasn't directed to budget any money to do anything in this budget, so it's gonna be on hold for another year
Unless we budget money.
unless you, yeah.
Okay. Have we spent money this year on that project?
We did some, engineering, and they're at a point where they're waiting for direction, like they could continue if we want, but we've stopped them.
Yeah, it's projected to spend 50,000 on that this year.
Okay, so the budgeted was 425, 50 is being spent.
Yes.
So the remaining 375, is that what went to the community park?
The unspent 375 will just roll over into the beginning debt service fund balance number. But
Okay,
Well, I'll throw this on the table. I'd like to propose that 375 not carry over to the balance, but be budgeted,
community park.
I was gonna say for the logging bridge project.
Yeah.
I need
And
to
next
look.
year.
Carry it over?
Well, no, actually,
Put it
we
into next year.
had 425 budgeted to use this year.
Yep.
We're only spending 50, right? So 375 has been allocated in this year's budget that's not being used.
This budget says 0, yeah.
And so in 2024's budget, we don't have any money dedicated to do anything on that project. And so to keep that project in motion, I'm proposing taking that 375 and instead of putting it in carryover balance, put it in that as a line item to do.
Same line item, yeah.
That's a good idea because
Whether we spend it or not is a different story, but we can't decide if we're gonna spend the money if it's not there. So I would rather put it there
Okay with
and then decide,
Yeah.
we're not gonna do anything, or come back and go, the additional steps this year are gonna cost us 300 or what, I don't know.
That's
Do we need
smart.
more than 375, Jerry?
Hold on one sec.
Sorry.
The debt, on the debt service fund budget sheet, if you look at that, the amount that's available to spend is restricted by how much property tax revenue is coming in, how much the beginning fund balance is. So if you look at the bottom of the page for reserve for future expenditure, it shows like $350,416. That's pretty much the maximum extra you can allocate onto the FY 2024 budget without
Even though
overspending.
375,
What's that?
even though 375 is not being used from the previous,
Yeah,
just
'cause-
evaporates.
yes, because the fund was appropriated to spend, the 425 on community park, but it went over and, just the amount of money that is being spent versus how much tax money is coming in versus the beginning fund balance, really 350, 416 is about all you could appropriate any more than what's already there in the capital outlay section of the general fund budget.
So that 375 from the logging bridge did in fact go to community park. Is that what you just said?
Well,
Because a few minutes ago I was told no.
you have a bank of money to spend and money got spent on capital projects. I don't know how you wanna redistribute it between projects, but
I kind of want it distributed how we budgeted it.
I'm not in charge of the projects.
No, I get what you're saying, Eric. This is something I think we gotta keep reminding ourselves, this is not like our house checkbook. In some ways it is, but in other ways it's not. There's a lot of rules of how money can be moved around and whatnot. Totally get it. And I don't think it's a matter of dollars evaporating or being necessarily moved by the sounds of it that
Wait, it just occurred to me, if we, change that 420 to economic development to 350, then you got 70,000 more. So if you guys do that, then the 350, 416 would, you'd have another, 70,000 on top of that. So it'd be 420, 416.
I'm in favor of moving that into the bridge project. If we can.
What dollar amount, Chris?
The amount he said, that the, that ending fund or reserve for future expenditure plus the difference of the economic development fund.
So that would be 420.
I would suggest you leave a little cushion,
Yeah.
not try to get it right.
Just put the
exact.
375 we initially had there.
Yeah, or even 400.
Commissioner Pat?
So let me continue down this track. So we've got this 300 and some odd thousand, we're adding the 75 that we've saved up above into it. Technically, the 300 and some odd thousand in overage to community park is going out, but eventually that will come back in from the city council. So that will then get added into this, so then it will become 4, 5, 6, 7, almost $800,000?
Yeah,
Okay. So eventually, this pot of money will be 800 and some odd $1,000 once all those wheels.
yeah, after all those supplementals and all that stuff gets swapped around.
Okay.
And then every time the taxes come due, right, for folks, and we collect them for the agency, then there's that much more money that is discretionary to spend. So that's the problem, is we're waiting for the tax day to pay for the activities. In the past, we've incurred debt, went out, bonded, stuff like that. So I mean, and I'm not suggesting that this is a conversation necessarily for this group as much as the URA itself. But I mean, if you really had a big project and you wanted to do it, you could go out and get more debt, and then with the idea of paying it off incrementally. So he's just trying to give you a strategy for paying money, only spending the money that's there available, because that's how much tax revenues come in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, big picture, if you guys look at the debt service fund budget page and you look at the tax increment amount that comes in and the tax increment prior, so the 4,752,000 and the 45, you get about $4.8 million a year in property tax revenue. And if you look down below at the debt service, you're paying about $4 million a year in debt service. So there's like $800,000 of revenue to be used in the URA per year. This year, tax increment revenue will go up a little bit more next year, but just big picture.
I have a question, and stop me if this is not appropriate to this. The committee people, do you guys, this bridge thing, the bridge to nowhere, I mean, I've heard about it forever because I come to the council meetings, but my God, the money on this thing. Do any of you guys just think this is something else?
Talking about the one over the.
Yes, I mean, we can't get Ivy Street done, and I know there's the restrictions and stuff, but what's this, this beautification, what's it gonna do for us? What's it gonna do for Canby? Commissioner Patton?
So this goes way back. Shortly after that bridge was painted, it began to peel.
Yep.
And as a citizen, I began to rail on about this, and nothing was done. And I was told there wasn't a way to go back on the contractor to get the money for it and stuff. So because the project has been sat for so long, over a decade, obviously it's going to end that costs of paint and all of that stuff has gone up.
I get it.
That's why this project has ballooned. If the project had been done sooner, we would have saved money. Just like with half the projects that keep getting kicked down the road.
Yep.
If they had been done years ago, the city would have had way more money to spend on them.
Yep.
And much more would be done for the citizens of this community. But here we sit.
Yeah.
Going round and round in this
I mean,
hamster wheel.
I go underneath it every day. I could care less if it looked gold. I really could, cause you know what I worry about? Going over those damn rough tracks. Our roads are terrible.
Well,
That's what,
that's an
people are
ODOT
looking
thing,
this
yeah.
way instead of that way.
That's an ODOT thing, but no,
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, the money just blows my mind on these projects. And it's like we're doing half of this and half of that. Forget this, let's finish this. Move on to the next one.
for me, I think it's important to beautify that bridge because that is one of the main entrances into our community.
You see
Well,
that
I'll
before you
tell
see
ya.
the arch.
People were not happy with the quiet zone with that cost. Wait till they see this cost. I mean, and basically, I wish more citizens would be involved, but they're not. They hear about it and then it's a done deal, but for me, it chaps me pretty good. I just, oh my gosh, the money we spent. So that's my spiel. Let's move on.
Remind me what all that money is earmarked for? Is it just to repaint it and to put some steps in? I thought this was gonna be like an alternative to get services and stuff across to the other side of the community.
They already can. Can already get.
Yeah,
services
Canby
across.
Fire and
So-
Canby PD already use.
And
that
it's safe to continue using it the way it is.
Yes.
So what it was meant to do was do stuff like this,
Make it pretty.
Okay.
to try and beautify it as an entrance to Canby. And then also this,
And
to
for-
connect it from the logging road down to 9090. So I'm
Okay.
cheating and I have the project list up that I thought we were gonna talk about, which we will eventually if I have a way with it.
Yeah, the huge expense, I mean, it's all an expense, but the big piece was the staircase or winding ramp or whatever coming off of there. And then having a conversation, cause that's not necessarily ODOT land, that's the short line.
Correct.
Land, and so, trying to get access to Fred Meyer, that side of 99 to Fred Meyer, so that people aren't cutting across the tracks through the hole in the fence. And whatnot, but again, that's,
And also explored lighting on the bridge, so for safety reasons further. So the services can go, but it was for lighting, for fencing, to obviously repaint it, the access from the bridge to Fred Meyer area. So people aren't illegally crossing over the tracks and unsafely crossing over the tracks. And because this money is urban renewal, one of the things that focuses on beautification, so it can't be used for, unfortunately for potholes on 99, it has to be used for projects like this, and as the gateway to Canby from the north side, that's why it was prioritized as a project.
I could see a lot more people utilizing that than the arch, just saying.
Okay, we need to get going. So let's get going. Are we done with, Eric, are you done?
I am.
Okay, we've had enough community discussion, I hope. Commissioner Pat?
So my question is, in the recommended motion, what is the number that's supposed to be put into that motion now that we've made these changes? Or is it the same? Is it the 5,067,000 or what is it? Or am I on the wrong page again?
5,769,315, is that the proposed number?
Yeah, it's $5,067,565. Because even by removing, it's still the same amount.
We're doing some quick math here.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And the budget message is 5,769,315.
Where is this number?
The number would be 5,699,315.
699,315?
5,699,315.
I thought we were just moving that 70, not taking it out.
Let's see,
We moved it from
you wanna move it to, I didn't have that in my notes.
economic development to the project, I thought.
Are we gonna go to the highway logging bridge?
Yeah.
So that stays the same.
it's
So,
the same
yeah,
number.
yeah, so it stays the same number unless we're gonna do something with the weight and community park number.
I have another question.
Original one.
The original number.
Yeah.
Should page 4 and page 6, should any of these numbers match?
They do. You have to put, the numbers from 5 and 6 together, add up onto page 4.
Okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
caught that.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Patton.
I move that the budget committee of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency approve the budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal year in the amount of $5,769,315 and to levy property taxes for the 2024 fiscal year for the minimum amount, or for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under section 1C, Article 9?
11.
Under Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457.
So moved.
Second. Yeah, Lisa second, okay? Vote or anything? We do. Vote?
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Abstain?
Abstain?
You might need to count.
Oh, Jim abstained.
I abstain.
He abstained.
Okay. So we had
So raise hands if you're an aye. There's
Aye.
3 nays.
five,
Yay. Jack, which way did you?
nays, and abstain.
2 abstentions.
Okay? There we go. And we adjourn. Or discussion,
But to move to adjourn, I think.
move to adjourn,
Oh, so moved.
Second.
okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay, we're adjourned. We are adjourned. Thank you, Canby.
Recording stopped.
Call to order. Welcome, Canby, to the second installment of the City of Canby Budget Committee meeting, May 25th, 2023. Call to order.
You did that.
You did
Just
that.
call it
Okay.
to order.
Roll call.
Okay, so Joseph Lindsay, the city attorney of Canby.
Eric Itola, Finance Director.
Eileen Stein, interim city administrator.
Scott Sassy, citizen.
Eric Carr, citizen. Brian Hodson, mayor.
Tracy Hensley, council president.
Liz Chapin, budget committee member.
Chris Bang, city council.
Jason Patton, council member.
Michelle Hensley, citizen.
Sean Bauer, City Council.
Lisa Potter, citizen.
Jack Pendleton, citizen.
Okay, old business. Approved minutes from the May 19th, 2022 Budget Committee meeting and approved minutes from the May 26th, 2022.
Chair Sassy?
Yes.
We do have one person online.
Oh, sorry, Counselor Davis.
Jim Davis, City Council, thank you.
Sorry, Jim. Old business, approved minutes from the May 19th, 2022 Budget Committee meeting and approved minutes from the May 26th, 2022 Budget Committee meeting.
So moved, but didn't we do that last meeting?
We did not check the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Have we seen them yet?
It got missed last meeting. Well, then I move we do that.
I'll second it. Oh, I can't, never mind.
2022, yes, I have.
You can't on this
I
one.
can't, I don't get to play on this one.
We need a second.
All those in favor?
Second.
Mayor seconded it.
No, I can't.
Can't
Yeah,
second
on
it,
this
so
one.
I'm seconding.
Okay.
I was still excited from the last one.
So, Counselor Hensley?
First.
Made the motion?
Yes.
And I'm
Counselor
seconding it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. On to new business.
Okay, so what I wanted to do was point out the parking lot memo, that you all received. And so this was based on, a combination or integration of the parking lot notes that, Chairman Sassy, produced last week and staff's review of the budget. And so that memo was prepared. I don't want to go into it right now, but I'd like to go into it at the end of the meeting so that we can get through the rest of the funds. So if that's okay. Okay. Yes.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? I'm curious if we're gonna have any discussion regarding the financial audit from last year, the budget. Not do that here, no discussion on the audit.
Not generally.
Okay.
If there's questions, we can come back to that though.
I'll save it for later.
So where we left off last time was the general fund. We have one more program to do, which is the non-allocated portion of the general fund. So Eric, I'm hoping that you talk through that, or if there's any questions on the non-allocated portion of the program of the general fund.
Go through it first. The top part of the sheet is, we're looking at page 75. The top part of the sheet is the resources, the non-allocated resources. So there's the property tax revenue, liquor licenses, state revenue sharing, stuff like that in there. The one thing to note is the American Rescue Plan Act grant money that has come in the last 2 years is not coming in anymore. So that's not showing. That's a $1.9 million difference, well, almost 2 million. Then below that those are all the overhead transfers, the transfers in and other sources. Those are all the overhead transfers between departments to cover costs of the departments. And you can see it's decreased slightly. And then the requirements section is at the very bottom. It's pretty similar to last year. The only notable difference is that when we get to the library, we can talk about this more there, but that the library is gonna need some transfer from the general fund to, for last year, because there was turnover and there's issue, but that's a supplemental budget issue. And, in the past, it's been, like last year, in in the budget, the general fund was gonna transfer 295 over to the library, and for 24, they're gonna need 375 transferred from the general fund. Questions?
The city, up under revenue, city sewer franchise fee, what is that and who pays that? Because we own the sewer, are we paying ourselves?
I don't,
It's in revenue, city sewer
Right.
franchise fee.
I don't know who's paying that, but I can find out.
And I'd like to, what that is, where that's coming from, because I couldn't find the other side of it anywhere.
Okay,
What has happened in the past, I don't know how it's done in Canby, but some cities do impose a right to occupy the right of way by their sewer or their utility fund, so it might be that.
Because they should come out of the sewer fund somewhere then, right? Sewer combined fund somewhere.
It probably is coming out as a revenue out of the sewer combined funds and
Now,
into the
I couldn't
general
find
fund.
it, I looked through there, but I couldn't find it.
Okay.
I'll look into it.
And I would just note that it is not, there is the Canby utility in lieu of taxes. So it's not
That's
them.
water and electric, so we own
Yeah.
the sewer.
Correct. But a franchise fee is revenue that somebody pays us.
Yeah,
So how do we know what that number's gonna be if we don't know where it's coming from?
I've like rebuilt the spreadsheet, so I have like the first page of my workbook shows a year after year about the amount of dollars coming in. And then I have a second sheet that's set up month by month, and I just review that and see that the dollars entering are a pretty much a monthly thing. And then for the year by year, I just do either trend analysis, average, whatever, to figure out how much I think that the dollar amount's gonna come in for that. I don't necessarily look at every person that's paying into the fund. If the payment is like monthly and it's really consistent, then I just go with that.
Any questions at all? Any other questions?
The library transfer,
Uh-huh.
do we have a formal request from the library for the additional 75,000, or are you just projecting, or?
When we get to the library fund, we'll see it, but the way the library fund is, they have like a certain amount of revenue. Do you guys just wanna go to the library?
Well, we can talk about it when we get, oh, it's the next page, okay, then save my question for the next page, that's fine. I didn't realize it was literally the next page.
Tracy is next on the agenda.
It's next, okay, flip, there we go, now we can talk about it.
Library Fund, Danny Smith.
Thank you, council and budget committee. It's my pleasure to share about the library's budget for the upcoming fiscal year. This is largely a hold the line budget for the library to maintain our current service levels. And just for those of you who may not be familiar, most of our operations, if not primarily, are funded through the library district, which is part of the permanent tax rate that is assessed in Clackamas County. As far as what we're looking at for this next year, we have a few goals that I wanted to highlight that are tied in with a couple ARPA project requests that will help us in the longer term have an understanding of the community through a community assessment with a consultant, as well as a project that we're looking at to help automate some more of the library, because we are a small, lean machine with what we do. And so to kind of jump down into our dashboard, the 2021 year, you can see we only had about 5,600 folks enter the library. But the following year, when we had our new people counter installed in the library, you can see it exponentially jumped back up as folks really started coming back into the library. In 22-23, by year end, we're expecting a 39% increase over last year in total visits to the library, hitting around 86,000 people. So that's about 1,800 people a week that we're having walking through the doors as we're open our 6 days a week. So I just really wanted to highlight that the library is really picking back up, and we're seeing most of that return from pre-COVID to the library. I will jump over to the budget detail and talk just about a few points here that are changing. As part of a task force that the county put together, there's some inconsistency in how all city libraries are collecting fines for overdue materials. And so as a group, the directors voted unanimously to go back and propose in the fee schedules for each city or the county library in that case, a standardization which will reduce some of our revenue for overdue fines. Overdue fines are a tricky revenue stream because they're hard to project already and there's no guarantee. That's a very fluid revenue stream. And so at the Library Advisory Board meeting last month, the board recommended that we adopt this, or recommended to council that this be adopted as part of the new fee schedule and our budget. As far as other revenue, the Friends of the Library continue to support the library this year. We're actually back just a little bit more. The Friends, we've asked for $23,000. This amount of money completely supports our programs because we don't have enough funding in the general or special fund to support the programs that the library puts on. As far as personnel services and materials and services, there are no major highlights that I have. There's no changes to personnel. One of the things that I will call out is some of our bill back fees to the county have gone up or are proposed to go up next year. Part of our facility is our computer infrastructure, especially for the public. And since this building was built, they're aging out of service. So we have to start replacing about 10 computers this next year for the public. So that's the spike that you can see in the consortial costs. Otherwise, I can go through more items, but be open to any questions you have.
Counselor Hensley.
Mr. Chair, so there weren't any changes in personnel services, but I do see an increase of $61,000 and potentially another employee. Are we adding to the staff there?
No, I can clarify for you there, Counselor Hensley. This last year, due to some personnel issues, we had several folks out on leave. We brought in seasonal staff with the city administrator's permission to help us cover those vacancies while they were temporarily vacant. Not vacant, but staff were not available. So I spoke with Eric about this. Those numbers should return to 8.9 next year. That's just based on the actuals that were reported this year through payroll. Is that right, Eric?
This is a proposed budget for next year that you're including the new FTE. This is FY '24 proposed.
Right.
581.
There's no increase to personnel. That's what I was asking about earlier, sorry.
I'm gonna have to look at that again.
45 to 81 is an increase. Budgeted was 545, proposed is 581, that is an increase, is it not?
Yeah, we need
It's
to
an
address
increase
that.
in wages over
Yeah, that's.
that many people. I'm gonna have to look at the FTE,
Yeah, the FTE has an increase too to 9.7.
The FTE.
but it's odd that it's not a full number. That's kind of strange.
Okay,
But
so,
yeah, but it is-
Mr. Chair, parking lot, please.
Yep, I got it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Counselor Patton.
Come on, computer, just play nice with me. On 77, under requirements for library, there at the bottom it says donations expected. There's like a $6,000 projected increase in your donations. Is that like a real thing? Do you know that this extra 6,000 is coming, or,
It's expended.
well, it still matches up
Oh,
above under resources, it still says there's a 6,000 increase. It's going from budgeted for last year of 17, projected for this year of 16, and then proposed 32,000, or not 32, $23,000. Is that, do you know of some donations that are coming in over what you normally get, or?
So sorry, that's all Friends, Counselor Patton.
So
that's
they're gonna be
their-
selling a ton of books.
Right, and so if I don't bring the Friends budget as part of this process, but historically, they give around 20,000 or more per year to the library to pay for programs.
Okay.
So you can see in 23 budget versus 23 projected, they committed to the library more than we could spend this year because we hired a new children's librarian. He is getting all the programs going again, so we're kind of in a rebuild place right now. And with our staff all working together right now, we projected a higher amount next year so we can get our programs back up to that higher level.
Okay, and so what you're insinuating, what you're saying too is there's some carryover.
There is no carryover.
There's no carryover,
We're
okay.
just asking them for more this year than we did the year prior.
If
Okay.
you don't get it, you don't spend it, so it's no
Correct.
harm, no
It's
foul.
a use it or
Okay.
lose it, yeah.
And those low numbers in 21 and 22 were COVID, right? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, that's why those don't show the.
In those years, we really were
Didn't have much
creative
to
with
do.
other ways to try to get library products and materials and services out without being in the building.
Okay.
Is there been any thought given to Sunday hours? Or is there even a demand for it?
I think one of the things that we're hoping for is that community assessment that we requested through the ARPA funds would help us with a consultant identify what Canby's wants and needs are. I don't know, I've been here 2.5 years, but prior to that, I don't know of any professional consultant coming in and helping really do a deep dive into the community to find out what the needs and wants are. So that would help us identify those. As far as stretching right now, I don't know how we could physically do that with the amount of staff we have. And prior to me coming, we lost an FTE as part of budget that directly impacted.
Any other library questions?
Did you get your $75,000 question asked?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, let's revisit my $75,000 question.
Indeed. So if we're looking at the library fund and we look at, let's look at the transfer from general fund up in the resource area, the top half of the sheet. You can see in 21, the number was 142,687. And if you go down to almost the bottom of the sheet under transfers out, is the overhead to the general fund is the same 142,687. So that overhead to the general fund is like the library, you know, is paying for the overhead of other departments that do work for the library, right? And in previous years, the general fund has foregone the transfer basically. I mean, it says it's a transfer from the general fund as a resource into the library, but then the library's overhead transfer is the same number. So it's just basically the general fund gifting the overhead to the library, I would say. In the 23 budget, it changed a little bit so that there was basically 90,000 more than the overhead charged to the library. And then this year, we've got 375 needing to be transferred from the general fund in the library, but their overhead charge is only 193,407. So if you look right below that, we're looking in the FY '24 proposed column. Look under operating contingency. In previous years, it's been $0 or $100, and I wanted there to be an actual operating contingency in there this year. So I've got 63,000 right there, which for the city, the normal operating contingency is 5% of personnel services plus material and services. So I'm adding an operating contingency to the library for unexpected events that might happen, which they just had last year with the staffing issue. So that's a difference. And then their reserve for future expenditure number, they have a little bit of reserve money in there too. And I think that explains the difference going from 295 to 375 is adding 80,000. So it's just trying to add contingency so that if things happen in the library, they don't have to come back necessarily for a public hearing supplemental budget. They have some money that they can just do an internal, supplemental budget with just the city council or any unforeseen. But that contingency line does not get spent unless something bizarre happens. and the council approves the transfer from contingency into another expenditure line.
75 and 63, though, there's still a $12,000 difference.
Yes.
And that's just an increase
Yes,
because.
so when I figure this out, I take the resources, I take the beginning balance, I add up all the other money that's gonna be coming into the library, except for the transfer from the general fund. Then I figure out all of the expenditures that are gonna happen, and whatever is needed is called the plug, is sitting where that 375 line is. And I try not to hit it to be an exact number, I try to make it a rounded number, so.
All right.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
For what it's worth, I want to acknowledge that libraries are an amenity service for each community that help make them welcoming and livable. They're an expensive service that our communities love and is a huge part of American cities. One of the things that the Library District Advisory Committee, LDAC, if some of you are familiar with the county's advisory board that kind of is the umbrella to all of our advisory boards, a couple months ago, there's been a pretty sizable push to the Board of County Commissioners to look at the tax rate and also think about the fact that the rate that was established in '08, I believe, is just not sustainable as costs continue to go up, and like we know, libraries are expensive. So there is some chatter, for those of you who are interested, that the BCC is looking at exploring this and possibly opening the IGA and pushing this back out for review by the whole county. So there is interest. That's part of it, Councilor Fargo, yes. So there is definitely a bigger discussion brewing at the county level that we were actually shocked, the directors were shocked to hear the Board of County Commissioners even entertain this just a couple months ago. So this could still be a couple years out, but it's a good path that we're seeing. Yes.
Counselor Patton.
Yeah, I would just like to say I'm a huge proponent of the Canby Library, obviously, because I'm one of the counselors that made sure that the money that went to this building was allocated for it, much to the chagrin of others in the community. And if I had my way with it, you would be open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And my goal before I die as a citizen of Canby is to get you there. So there you go.
Thank you.
Okay,
Nope, anybody else?
well, we have Danny down here already. Let's skip to the tech services fund.
Oh. Paul's gonna
Paul's
do
gonna
that
do
part
that.
also.
Okay,
Do you
never
wanna
mind.
skip?
Never mind.
No.
Let's just go in order then.
Okay. Okay. Transit fund, Todd.
Hello, Todd Wood, Transit Director. Talk about the transit funds. I'm not gonna spend much time on the highlights. For those of you who are familiar with the transit system, we took over our transit system in 2002 from TriMet. And at the same time, we took over the payroll tax from TriMet. And I'm proud to say that once again, we have been able to keep the payroll tax at the same level it was established in 2002. And we're gonna continue to keep it at the same level it was established in 2002. So unlike our predecessor of TriMet, who was raised theirs every year, we will not be raising ours, and we have not raised ours. So we provide a much better value to our businesses. We also do a much better service than our predecessor to our businesses. We continue to expand that service. We added the city circulator. We call it the Canby Loop, which started a little slow, but right now we're doing anywhere from 60 to 90 rides a day. It's a free service. It runs every 30 minutes, and it's become very popular. So when we hit 2020, this next fiscal year here, in September, we're going to expand that to Saturdays. So people have the opportunity to ride it free on Saturdays to get around the city. Our loop hits nearly every single park in the city, with a few exceptions, and they keep adding more, so I'm not gonna be able to get them all. But And we hit almost every major shopping area in the city. So it's been very popular with folks who don't want to use our dial ride service and don't want to use the 99X, but still want to be able to get to the local stores. So it's been very successful. We continue to receive our grants. We'll continue to receive them this year. They're going to change a bit, so I'll cover that in a minute because you'll notice my numbers shift around a lot and I'll explain why. Other than that, we've started looking at our new building. We're not quite there yet. We're at we need to go out for engineering and architecture, and we're just waiting for the thumbs up from our administration to say, go ahead and do that. So you'll see that money is still carried over from year to year to year. As soon as we can get that thumbs up, we'll start that. We own the property, so that property has already been acquired. We've had it since 2019. We've had an analysis done on how we'll lay it out. We just need to now move forward with that. So as far as our revenues go, they are a changing because the one thing the state loves to do is change our grants around. So one of the oldest grants we've had in the transit industry is the state transportation funds. And the governor said that needs to go away. Legislator voted it out, it's gone. That money has disappeared. However, since they didn't want us to lose that money because that supports elderly and disabled transportation, they rolled it into the State Transportation Improvement Fund. So that is HB 2017 for those of you who are familiar. And that money is what everybody pays out of their paycheck. So that money is regional, TriMet being the leader of the region. That money is allocated to TriMet. We go to TriMet and say, I'd like this money. And their board says yea or nay, and then the state agrees. So the good news is the state set the standard for that original pot of money, so we will see roughly the same amount, about 130,000, but it's now built into a different pot. So even though that 130 is gone, it's not really gone. Our 5311, that supports our 99X, that looks a little lower. It always has been a little lower, but with all the COVID, we kept getting extra COVID cash. So we get a little bit extra there along the way. Well, that extra is gone. So now we're back to normal 5311 levels, which is why it's at 300 there. The 5310, the one that says JTA 5310 is gone. That doesn't exist anymore, but the actual 5310 is called grant operating. This may be the very last biennium I get that money. I had to fight to get that money. They have allocated that mostly to capital expenses. And I was able to squeeze out about 90,000 a year for the next 2 years for that. So let that may go away. We still have $94,000 in capital. That's to support our shelter project. Should ODOT ever finish their 99 project, we do have the shelters. They're sitting disassembled at Public Works, ready to go. Now, the biggest change you'll see is the $722,000 of STIF funds. So that's a pretty big shift upwards. That includes that STF money, but I am anticipating, and it's looking really good, an additional $160,000 for my transit master plan. So if that comes through, I only have to match 20% of that. So it'll be $200,000 for the transit master plan and 160 in grants. So that number is going to go down next year. This year it looks a little inflated. So that money supports our Saturday service as well as our Canby loop. So it'll support the Saturday loop as well. It supports now the elderly and disabled, our dial ride service, and it's going to support our transit master plan. So that's why that number has shifted so much. Most of the rest of the stuff is fairly normal as expected. On the expense side, things always go up because transit is expensive. You'll notice the increase in professional technical service, that is the transit master plan. So I'm anticipating that 160 from STIF plus our 40 would be an additional 200, and then we use the remaining funds for things such as brochure design and so on and so forth. We are redoing our logo. We're anticipating using some of that money to redo stationery and those items along the way. Our contractor costs always go up, and this will probably be the last year I see anything this low. We're at 8034 this year and have to renegotiate the rate in January. And with the costs in the state going up as they have, I expect that 1.75 million to go up tremendously next year, even though that seems like a lot now. It's actually a bargain compared to what some of our other fellows are saying. Outside of that, most everything is roughly the same. As far as transit projects go, I need to replace all the cameras and all the buses. They're all aging out, and so there's $130,000 there to replace those. And then bus shelters, still waiting to finish those. And then, of course, my building that I would love to build yesterday. Questions?
Is the building going, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
is the building going to stay at 1.5 or is that?
No, that is not. That is just what I have in cash. I don't actually know what the actual total of the building is because I need an engineer to come in and design it for me and say, this is how much it's gonna cost. The initial estimate I got a year and a half ago was 3 million. So once we get that done, then we have to look at how much money I actually still have after I spend the 1.5 and how much more I need, and then we have to figure out how to get it. I can't do that until I know what it's actually gonna cost me in the first place. But I know Bob wants me out. Talks to me all the time. When are you
Bob's
moving?
lucky he has you. Now, for
Well,
the
he's
people
got
that
more-
don't,
He's got more stuff to
Well,
store.
hold on.
He's got
all right. The people at home that don't know, your property is behind your building, correct?
Correct.
Kind
So-
of down from Pioneer Pump.
Yes.
Yes.
Just want to make sure we're not making any sort of comments about
Disparaging anybody.
real life people out
Yes.
there.
There's a lot of Bobs.
Bob at Yahoo.
No, he's been very generous, so we appreciate that. But we do, we own the 2 acres, we bought it from Pioneer Pump. We own half of that lot. Right now, it's a wonderful gopher mount. So, yeah, we have a massive amount of gophers back there. Like to pave them all.
I used to weed eat it, nightmare.
Yes. Oh.
Counselor Hensley first and then Pat.
Thank you. If you breeze through this and I missed it, I apologize. The increase, it seems pretty significant from last year to this in membership dues and fees. It's 29,000 versus,
Oh, yes, so, all that, fancy software I put in, costs money. It's, everything software is a service now. You can't just buy software anymore, you have to rent it.
so it's software fees.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
is the software services we use.
No
to-
country club fees or memberships. there.
Well, that's hidden lower down.
Thank you.
Counselor Pat.
So first of all, it always amazes me in the decade or more that I've been on the city budget committee, how well you guys milk money out of all the different corners of the world. It is super impressive. But I will say that as far as your Gophers go, and this might be a good thing for everybody in the city, you, in the contingency, you might wanna get yourself a mole blaster. Because you wanna get rid of some moles and you wanna have fun doing it, you get yourself a mole blaster.
All right, put that in.
Can we put that under the police department fringe benefits?
I was just wondering, didn't we just redo the transit plan or something? I mean, we did it, I was on the committee like 8 years,
It has to
right?
be done every 5 years.
Has to be?
Has to be done
Okay.
because anytime we ask for money from
We
the
did it
state.
twice.
Yeah, it's every 5 years. So it was done in 2011, it was done in 2017, it needs to be done again. Because every time we go and ask for money, the state says, where in your master plan is it? And you have to show them where in your master plan is. And once your master plan gets beyond 5 years, you get you need to update your master plan.
It's just so expensive.
It's insanely expensive.
Make it up and do it like the last,
Which is why we ask the state to give us money to help us pay for it.
oh.
So.
Anybody else? Okay.
Did you wanna hit fleet or do you wanna?
Yeah, let's go ahead and. Right. It's already sitting there. Sure. Find the right page.
You too.
So fleet doesn't change much. We are incredibly fortunate to have 2 very, very skilled mechanics that are dealing with just under 90 vehicles, just two people. So that's, you usually see a higher vehicle to employee ratio than we have. And that's not including all the equipment that our public works folks use as well. So very competent mechanics do an excellent job, keep our vehicles on the road, and as you can tell, their budget doesn't change much, so it's not increasing much. There's always the question of how much is gas gonna go up? We don't know, so it's a guesstimate. Parts are still significantly behind. We have vehicles that sit longer than they should, and the parts cost us way more than we expect. So a lot of these are placeholders hoping that we'll come close, and if we don't, that's a bummer. But it's been good so far, so fingers crossed, but not much has changed.
Todd, why did janitorial services and supplies go up so big?
So there's been a few changes to the way the janitorial service goes, so I know Jerry knows more about that, but also it just costs a lot of money to launder their uniforms, their work clothes, all the cloths they have, so it's just costing more to do that type of stuff. I tell them they don't need to clean it.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Please talk.
Eric, come on down. You're the next contestant.
Counselor Davis, are you okay?
I don't hear that.
I'm doing good.
Eric Whiten, Canby Swim Center. So our budget is pretty status quo from last year. Our FTE is going up just a little bit because we have been able to fill a position that we've had vacant for several years. We were looking for someone who had somebody that was working part-time, and we were able to promote them to that. So it's a known commodity, which is very nice. We also took out the money for any renovation because no matter how we get started on it, if and when we get started on it, it's probably not gonna happen in the next year because the timing of it wouldn't work anyway. So other than that, it's just adjusted for inflation and such. The Canby Swim Center, again, is a 53-year-old building. We did a renovation in 1990. The renovation in 1990 was for the envelope of the building, so we put in an air system. It didn't have an air system at all before that, and put insulation on the outside of the building, which saved the building at that time. So otherwise it would have just disintegrated with all the chlorine in the water. And that part of the building is still pretty good. As far as changes for this year, we had to replace our main water line as it had a leak. And that was unexpected, but probably shouldn't have been just because of how old it is. And then I think most of you know that we operate on a 5-year levy for our revenue. And our current levy goes through June of 2027. And we did have some changes in how we do our services this year because the school district changed their hours. So that affects us in several ways. So it affects when we can have second grade lessons, and it affects when we can have employees come to the pool. So we have a lot of employees that are youth, high school students, and they're involved in a lot of different activities. So those activities all got moved an hour later. So therefore, some of our programs couldn't start for an hour later and that type of thing. So it reduced the number of public lessons we could do this year because we couldn't do any in the winter when our schedule got a little depressed. So that's kind of the idea. Any questions?
I have a question about second grade swim lessons. Do we get money from the school for doing that? And do we have to do it for all second graders? I remember my son was in Gators and he had to still do the swim lessons. Couldn't we just do it for the kids that don't?
We do swimming lessons for all second graders. It is part of our lease agreement that we provide those. And it actually has always been part of the agreement. since the very beginning. So and I think it's super valuable.
Oh,
And
it
even
is,
if they know how to swim, it's okay, then they still get some pool time and they get to help the others learn how to swim better, so it all works.
Councilor Patton made a comment about transit and where they milk money from, and I think that the comment carries over to how you keep this building upright.
Upright.
The fact that it's, I mean, it literally probably should have been floated years ago, but
This is Eric MacGyver.
MacGyver.
They have great programs, really great
So,
programs.
Yeah, I do want to see us do some renovations at some point, but obviously, like you said, we can't do it this year, even if we said go today, so.
Counselor Patton.
Another thing that I hope to see before I die as a citizen of this community is you get a new pool.
Eric wants that too.
It would help if we acquired the property and got that in here.
Whole nother discussion.
If you win the lottery, maybe you can buy the property and sell it to them cheap, and then they can build a new building. We get that tri-rent flex.
If I was to win the lottery, trust me, there would be all sorts of things getting done in this community.
Anybody else?
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Todd?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I make a correction real quick? When you asked me about fleet services, did you say contract services? Cause I heard something else. Why did the contract services?
No, janitorial
Oh,
services.
janitorial.
Yeah.
Okay, cause
Yeah.
the contract services went up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Streets budget, got some, been doing some good projects around town, starting a lot of them. Got some highlights, trying to think, the goals we're trying to do, we got started as the North Locust Street project, which I've been trying to do for years here, and.
Starting on page 83.
Oh, sorry about that, thank you. We were gonna try to accomplish that new street from 4th to 10th, kind of go with our current CIP that we're working, just going around the fairgrounds and all that. We also, in that project, did some sewer repairs with it, and then Maple Lane, I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, behind the fairgrounds was one of our worst roads. We got the sewer fixed so we could overlay that, and we're gonna be grinding and paving that tomorrow, which is really good. So, as you can see, we've got 4 streets overlaid. We try to do about 3.5 miles of paving a year with street maintenance fee money. Some of the projects that we're working on, that you'll see budgeted in here is, the street maintenance fee projects. You'll see it's $100,000. I always have a lot of questions on that. I put that in there, and, the road was actually brought up by Jack Pendleton today when he asked me. That was one of the roads I was gonna try to fit in. Every so often, we have to take a year off of paving because our amount gets down. We were around 400,000 that we have in street maintenance. So with the Pine Street alignment project and the 10th Avenue projects, we're gonna do 100,000 of paving and then use the street maintenance because they fit the category on the pavement index to pave those. So you're not gonna see street maintenance projects, but they're gonna be done with the project, if that makes sense. Pine realignment, there was some question about the, actually, let me go down from the list. South Ivy Street project currently is underway. They're purchasing right-of-way and the construction easements right now. We're making great headway on that. The Public Works crew is actually working with Canby Utility and undergrounding the power. You can see they're moving slow and they're working in between areas where they have right-of-way and construction use they can work in. So they're hoping to meet that. That is hoped to go out to bid next fall. So we gotta stay ahead of them with the underground and power. The other projects is our mayor's favorite, the Industrial Park 99 connection. We're in communication with ODOT and permitting to try to get going with that, signal permitting and all that, so that's going well.
When will that be done, Jerry?
Like soon.
The road will be done soon.
Yeah, we're, it's hard to tell just with the time frame on ODOT. I would hate to give it, but within a couple years. You know, that's what our goal is.
So by the time Councilor Patton dies, right?
Yeah,
Right?
I think he was saying
See
that
before he dies, right?
Hopefully,
his grandpa
Don't
lived to
die
be
now.
90. Good, but, yeah, so yes, we'll have that done soon. I hope to just kind of have that rolling in with the South Ivy Street project, kind of the same time frame as that. The question on the Pine Street alignment, we had two different numbers at one point. There was 850,000 and then there was a million something, I don't remember the exact number. The reason that larger number was in there was because this project, I wanna do the Pine realignment from Pine Street, which it's actually Fourth Street, North Pine, up to the turn, because it turns to County Road on the corner. So we're gonna start with that section, and then I'm gonna revisit the other question later with the city council. If we wanna take over that portion from where we left off on the Pine realignment to down to 10th Avenue to reconstruct that. Does that make sense?
Did we not take over Pine? I thought we took over Pine.
Pine, you guys decided it was too, I mean,
just too messed up.
Numbers weren't right yet.
and Mr. Besner's been trying hard for us to, and, so no, we have not taken
We
over
haven't
Pine
taken
yet.
it, okay. I
And
know
so
there was a
that,
conversation on
that
this.
would be the section there. Is everyone kind of familiar with that whole intersection and cleaning that up? And then the other project is to take off from North Locust, where we just paved off of, North Locust on 10th Avenue, Northeast 10th Avenue from Locust to Pine Street. That's, we're working on, getting the rest, we need 22 more easements and right-of-way, or purchase of right-of-way to finish constructing that road. So we're gonna try to start that soon, July 1, if this is approved. So that's a great, around the fairgrounds, gravel shoulders, and get that overlay fixed just for our public safety. These projects, by the way, we have been working with and have highly recommended by the Traffic Safety Commission. So that's been through that process. That's how we determine these roads. Let's see, the charging station, I've had a lot of conversations with that, kind of working with Canby Utility on that. We are actually put money in there, just kind of like we wanted to do with the logging road, just to have it in there in case we can do it, but we're kind of on hold on that. We're gonna wait and see how Dawn's TSP update goes with all that, because we don't want to get ahead of that. We don't want to build something and have it not work with the TSP. So we're gonna introduce that into it, but if something comes where we need to, we have some money to go forward.
Jerry, I'm sorry, what were you talking, I missed that.
An electric car charging
Okay, I was
station.
gonna
Yep.
ask, where's that going?
Where they kind of wanted to do it was right over here in the cinema parking lot,
That's a good place.
somewhere for bring people downtown and
Will
all.
people forget about it like they do the movie
It's,
theater?
it's, what,
Not if their cars.
what I think, we have all the information on it, and what I think if it did decide to go forward or something like that, or look into it, we should do a work session on it, because we have all the information to, bring forward on it, but.
They'll go watch a movie while they're charging.
Let me say something. I'm not, when I make a
Is it
statement,
going to be
I'm
about
the
a
man of the
business?
people.
No.
This is stuff that I hear and I'm getting it out there. I forget about that it's there.
But
And you put a charging station down there, you're gonna forget about it.
People will go to the movies more if they can charge.
2035, Oregon is only selling electric cars.
God help.
So, you know, that's all I can say. We'll need to add more.
And, go ahead.
with the charging station, I also believe, because I, as the liaison to the Canby Utility Board, I was kind of looking into this because there was some questions about it. I also believe that there's gonna be some involvement with the planning commission about rules with, it's not necessarily the TSP, more so it's about the planning commission being able to weigh in on what that car charge, like where's the optimal place to put them and that sort of stuff, if memory serves me correctly.
Be a good project to involve planning in, for sure.
Yeah.
And how, we talked about the week before, funding, how are we gonna maintain those? Where does the maintenance funding come for that?
That's a very, very good question. That's why I would really recommend we do a work session at city council with all of, and bring all that information forward if we do, if there is a recommendation to look into this.
And then I have one more question. Why do you not get any more traffic fees? 51,000, but 51,000 is 51,000.
What are we?
Traffic in lieu fees. 51,155 in 2022, and now it's gone. Page 84.
Resources, page 84.
Do you know that?
Page
It's
83.
under revenue.
Look at 22, and that's the only year.
Oh, yeah, there was just 1 year of it in 2022.
Can I help with that? That fee in lieu is not come up very often, and it was to address issues like large industrial projects.
Oh, okay.
Like Amazon and others, and so we've been collecting that because that is fixing the Haynes Road situation indirectly through funding of Walnut Street Extension.
Okay.
So that's just to answer that.
Thanks, Tom.
I have a question.
Jack?
Yeah, question on the car chargers. Can we use either gas tax money or any kind of federal grants? I mean, there's a lot of talk, politicians are sure talking a lot about how much money the federal government's gonna put out for electric cars. So is there any opportunity to get any money that way rather than funding it through the city budget?
That's a good point.
That's what I wanted to look into. Can we use gas tax money for something? You know, I don't know how electric car charging people pay, if they pay into gas tax.
They,
Do you know, Joe?
they
'Cause
end
you-
up paying into the regardation account.
They
And then
they tell the DM, or tell, ODOT how many miles they went and they get charged so much a mile.
Yeah.
Liz?
There'll be some funding streams, I think, but those aren't necessarily
This budget,
apparent on their face right now.
right.
Especially with the federal government being in its state.
I don't think,
What's the urban forestry program?
The Urban Forestry Program is a program we set up years ago, and it's because we really are kind of we're really into trees and garden state. We've kind of taken over the street tree plantings for development. So what they do is they give us money, and then the city staff goes out and makes sure the proper trees get planted in the proper area. So we don't have sidewalk issues, we don't have the wrong trees planted in the planter strip. It's been a lot of work for city staff, but it sure made a huge difference in development on getting the right stuff done and making sure they're planted.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
How do the developers feel about paying a fee in lieu of putting the trees in themselves? Just curious how the program's working.
The program actually, we've kind of allowed what we've actually done is, Dawn, you could probably explain this better, but we have a matrix set up on how many trees go in, but if they wanna do a street tree plan and show it to us, we can eliminate some of the plans, so it ends up being, they end up liking it. They actually, I haven't had any complaints on it, and if they complain too hard, I'll let them put them in, but they're gonna put the right trees in.
Okay.
So,
And still pay us.
what's that?
I said maybe still pay us, right?
Yes, there you go. And then the last kind of project is the fuel station, I think we've talked about in all the other budgets. Is there, I think that's it. Is there any other? Oh, and then we are requesting one position, and it's a project manager. And so right now, we already have, what this would be for is our wastewater plant supervisor has moved into this role kind of now. We're still paying him, we pay him out of different funds if he works in them, but right now he's paid out of wastewater, and he's running our projects for us and kind of overseeing the wastewater plant at 30,000 feet and letting some new people move up into that position. So that would open up a supervisor position down there if we got this position approved. So, and it'll relieve me of it'll help me a lot. It's helped me a lot already, just with, and this person's gonna directly, they're 100% on the Walnut Street project, making sure that moves through fast. And our Safeway Street projects, our community park project, all this stuff, they're gonna assist with this, so. That's kind of the highlights of the streets department.
Mayor, one of my favorite topics, street maintenance fee.
Yes,
We're not keeping up.
we are not.
So how far behind are we?
It depends on what you want your streets to be at a level. And we were putting together a task force. I was working with, it was Jason Padden at the time, I believe, that I was working with. And now that he's become a counselor, I think that we need to readdress that. I have all the paperwork put together, everything else, and I would love to get that going again. I know that was, I think, a council goal to look into whether what we need to do with that and what we want our street levels to be at. So I'm ready to move forward with any type of like committee to bring a recommendation to the council when I get direction. And that's something we could talk to Eileen about.
I mean, so basically between the gas tax and then the road maintenance fee, as the gas tax has declined, at least the collection of it and the amount, I mean, how much less are we paving
Well,
this coming summer versus last summer?
do you want to answer that or do you want?
No, I'm getting on the list.
Okay.
For when you answer that.
So as you can see, we have, I think Eric told me we have around 400,000 in this year's. I like to pave about $1 million, do $1 million worth, I get a better price on everything, and that usually gives me around 3 miles of road I'm doing a year. And so every few years, I have to take off a year of paving to get that built up to a million, and this year's kind of one, we're gonna cut back. So, I had all this, a month ago, I had all this down to a deal, but we are not maintaining. We are
Slowly falling
we're
behind.
slowly falling behind. To bring, if we had it, I believe, we have just under 800,000 coming in. I believe if we got it up to $1 million, a little over $1 million or 1.2, it would maintain. It would maintain our current rating. But don't quote me on that, but that's for another time. But we need to really address it. And I know that Scott brought that up earlier about the roads, you know.
Didn't you, what are we gonna do? We talked about forming another street task force.
That's what the next step is.
Okay.
Is to get a task force together and bring a recommendation to council of what to do.
Counselor Patton.
So this is partly my fault. Okay, I will freely admit that before I was on city council, I was working with Jerry to help put together this street maintenance fee task force, cause I was one of the original members of it. When as we got closer to a fairly paradigm shift in the council, it was sort of decided that maybe we need to let that shake out before we start making recommendations and trying to do all that. Plus, it was now Christmas, and some of the business people that we were trying to involve in the commission, in the committee were like, you're crazy if you expect us to come to a meeting because it's Christmas. We need to make money. And so now we've had some changes in city management, and so the goal is to get the paddles on that group and get it going again. And as far as the gas tax goes that the city collects, and Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's actually been utilized for several years for the handicap intersections to get them up to code so that the paving can be done, correct?
Did you say gas tax?
Yeah, so the
Yes.
city's gas tax, so there's that 3% city gas tax, that's actually for several years been going to the to the ADA ramps.
Truncated domes
Because you
and-
can't pave the streets until you update the ADA ramps, so that's where that money's.
$1 million of paving, 150,000 of it has to be used for gas tax or so for that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Eric. I just want to point out that the street maintenance fee shows as a line in the revenue and is right around 600,000 a year.
600, okay, thank you for.
And, near the end of the street, detail sheet, under where reserve for future expenditure is, there's a reserve for future expenditure street maintenance program, which we're predicting will be like 590,000 in 2023. That would be the balance in it, in June, just so you guys know. where to find those numbers.
Just a note to Jerry and Eric both, Representative Heeb has said that Energy Trust has a program that they'll pay up to 50% on installation of car chargers. And I do not yet have the answer to the question about maintenance, so I'll let you know what I find out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One more. So, regarding the street maintenance fee, I do find it interesting that we have held steady at $600,000 when we've had such a growth in the number of houses in the city of Canby. Thoughts on
It's actually lower this year than last year.
that's what I mean.
Where are those dollars?
Yeah, they come as part of the utility bills, so
Okay.
that's what I know. I know the dollar amount doesn't change. I can't really correlate it to the number of houses that have increased. I'm happy to look into that.
I'm just curious.
That is a good catch. Why didn't I start reeling on that?
You're right, because it seems that it was, what is it, $5 per,
There's a formula, but I mean, business,
we added 100 houses, that's another,
we throw around, I think the single family home piece is $5. I know businesses are different rate based on square footage and parking and
Yeah, and
trips.
apartments and.
Apartments are based on
otherwise,
trips,
all
so.
that stuff, yeah.
so yeah, with the growth of the city, the growth of that should be increasing as well.
Yeah, I mean, with the
Not decreasing.
increase of, with, Columbia being added and the industrial park growth that we've had over the last couple of years, housing on the south and north end, I'm just interested that that's flat. So maybe we're just waiting on a big check from
I was
Canby
gonna say, maybe
Utility.
they owe us some back money, there could be.
They're hanging on to it, making some
Well, it's not
investments.
Canby Utility, it's
Well,
us
they-
internally.
Will they collect it?
Billed through.
No.
It's billed through Canby Utility.
No, the street maintenance fee is not billed through the Canby Utility, it's billed through us. That's why we started billing sewer and all that stuff ourselves, because Canby Utility refused to bill it. That's why you get the bill from the city that says sewer, street maintenance fee, and park maintenance fee.
Oh, you're right.
So it's somewhere internal.
Yeah.
Is it being eaten up by the cost of the billing process?
That's what I was wondering, if that cost went up, Eric, you'd have to, that could be why it's.
Pretty
I
flat
know
here.
the cost has gone up, but there's no way it went up that much.
Well, you also have to assume that everyone pays their bills.
No, I meant like in my house, my wife scratches that check, I don't. So I
You
wouldn't
don't
know.
see that bill.
No.
Okay.
It's on your
So I get a cut bill and I don't remember seeing it
Well,
there.
And if that's the case, to your point, Joe, you said, it's under the assumption that everybody's paying their bill. Is there a way for us to get an audit of who is delinquent?
Yeah, we collect the sewer, you know what I mean, and we try to collect back payments that aren't made.
Yeah, but as I understand it, the way that was written in the charter is that if the city is owed those fees, a lien is put on the property. And when the property is sold, then the city is made whole.
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, each year we have to send a certification to the county of people who are behind and won't pay. And then they add that amount to their property tax. So when the house is sold, we get paid for that.
okay. Cause still even that, I don't think would amount to Gosh, I'm gonna have to go through my huge budget binder there and see just how, now you've got, thank you, Brian, or Mr. Mayor, that's
Give him something to noodle for a while, you kept him busy.
I purposely did that to keep Jason busy.
Yeah, why did it
Take a
go
look
down
at that.
$15,000?
Take a look at that.
Hang them in the town square.
Any other questions for, on the street program?
No.
Okay. Let's move to system development chart.
Transient room.
Well, I'm trying, just trying to
Oh,
take advantage
Oh,
of
keep it.
Jerry's already.
I wanted to see him do some aerobics. No, I'm just kidding. SDCs.
SDCs, is that you, Jerry?
That I don't
No.
think so.
Never mind, okay.
Jerry's actually
Cemetery. No, I think we're done.
facilities.
It's facilities, I believe, we did cemetery, I think.
Cemetery perpetual cares. I think we
Sewer
should
combined, is that him?
just have Jerry sit there and I'll just blow through these two that are really quick.
Okay.
Okay, so
We're gonna do cemetery care.
now let's do transient room tax.
Which one?
Transient room tax on 86. This one's pretty much just status quo. I'm sure you guys have seen this all before. We collect transient room tax money from hotels, Airbnbs. And then for tourism promotion, would just have budgeted again to spend 10,000 on services and supplies, and tourism enhancement is the same thing. So this one's really just status quo here.
We had asked a year ago about revenue from Airbnb. It looks like there's at least 3 in town.
Do we know how many there are and how do we track them?
So, don't know how we track them. There was an employee here that was like searching on Airbnb for houses.
Yeah.
And then contacting them.
Would that be a chamber thing?
There has been there has been attempts as part of our business licensing as well to track folks down who were doing that.
They would need to have a business license to operate an Airbnb, but we don't know if that's happening.
Well, if it's happening unbeknownst to us and nobody applied for it, then we have to try to locate them.
It would seem that they would probably be charging the tax to their guests.
Probably.
Yeah.
So
No, that's-
it'd be nice to get that.
Well, no, but that is how it's supposed to work, right? It's the people who collect the fee collect the tax and then pass it on to us.
Do you know if we've got any revenue from that?
I believe, at least I knew of a few where Airbnb itself did reach out and do that because they were involved. So that made it easier.
Usually the ones that collect those fees.
Yeah.
Counselor Patton.
Okay, I wanna dig into this Airbnb thing a little more. So, are you saying that there was a city staff person that was searching Airbnb for people who were running Airbnbs in the city of Canby and then saying, hey, guess what, you need to be paying this tax? That can't be set up through Airbnb.
Well, it can be set up through Airbnb, but I'm not. So there's also folks who aren't Airbnb specific. They're just offering their,
They're like Verbo.
or, you know, there's a lot of different ways that people are trying to
Or
be
just,
short-term rentals. And so this person was looking, we're saying Airbnb, but they were looking for short-term rentals that they recognized, in Canby.
Huh.
That's a strategy.
Counselor Barwood.
Gonna be dead.
So how do we send a bill to the hotel to get those?
The hotel is supposed to, because of the way their operations work, they're supposed to have that on their bill, and they send us, they collect it for us, and then they actually can keep like 1% of it for themselves for the overhead, and then they send us. So they actually do the collection and send it to us.
Got it, so honor system.
Yeah.
right? We don't bill them for it.
Correct.
Okay, so I was gonna say if we're billing.
I mean, it's the
hotel, why
law,
can't
so
we
they're
not
supposed to
bill?
be doing
Yeah.
it. and doing it correctly.
Okay, so or do we not have a way to reach out to Airbnb to say, hey, there's 3 in our city that we haven't received any transient room taxes on? Can
We
you send us
we
a
can
check?
certainly double those efforts.
I just think if they're collecting, they should, yeah, right, if we should have some way to bill them, I guess, for them. But, it's interesting.
The wheels started.
The tax man,
I love going
Position
down,
is-
I love going down rabbit holes, dude.
Oh, well, you've got a doozy.
Do we?
Anybody else?
No.
Okay,
Okay, SDC, the System Development Charge Fund, has all the new businesses and homes and stuff is going, being built. We just collect the revenue, so you can see that all up above. I've estimated transfers out and other uses there, so estimating using over $8 million in SDC funds for '24. And then below that is just the reserved amounts that would be in the specific funds at the end of the year. So transfers out, parks using like 3.5 million, streets would be using 4 million, sewer 700,000, storm about 245,000. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, when I'm looking at the total reserve for future expenditure, what used to be ending balance. We've drawn it down drastically this year to about half of what it was.
Yep.
Should we now start, I guess what I'm saying is I don't wanna draw the reserve down too much. So are we looking at that, and do we have formulas and all to balance that so that it doesn't get too low? So that we don't, in other words, so they don't spend too much?
It's one of the things that I've brought up and noticed the last couple of years, and I think it's really important that we have a long-term capital project planning group together to look at fund balances, the SDC fees, and apply them to projects and really keep on top of that, but.
there's also, because system development charges are charges that we charge developers when they come in for the pressure on the system in these various ways, right? So the streets, the parks, the wastewater and such. We have an obligation to actually spend those fees to alleviate the pressure because of the system. So you can't actually treat it as much like a bank. I mean, you can save up for bigger projects or whatever, but I mean, really, under the law, we're supposed to, if we've collected them, we're saying this much pressure is on the system, and so we have to allocate those and spend them kind of within a reasonable amount of time.
But what I'm saying is I don't wanna draw too much down because, okay, we're looking at what comes in on developers, and if the current economic situation continues, we're not gonna be seeing nearly as many houses built because there're just not that many houses selling right now. So then if the income goes down, we don't wanna be in too much of a hole here when we do have a project that we need to use them for.
Absolutely.
Councilor Pat.
Well, I think this goes along with those, with the SDCs are restricted funds, right? So we can only use them for certain things, so if the
And we're
city.
supposed to use them for
Yeah,
those.
so
We're supposed to use
if the city was to get in that sort of financial thing, a lot, like if all of a sudden sewer, water pipe was gonna blow up and blow, a big hole in the road, you can't use these funds to do that. So technically, this is one of those few reserves where it's better for it to be zero, because that means we've made those investments in the community, right?
From a certain point of view, sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, the law looks at us to actually take these in and then actually expend them within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess what I'm wondering here though, And when you mentioned sewer, that's a good one, because with the stroke of a pen, DEQ can cost you a lot of money to have to now filter out something that you didn't have to before. Okay, so is that something that SDC funds could be used for? If you suddenly had a requirement for something that you aren't doing now, that's gonna cost you a lot of money, can you use SDC funds for that?
Well, the law says that if it's capacity increasing and it's for infrastructure that's in a capital improvement plan, then it can be spent for that.
Okay, so if it's.
I mean, it's hard to take a hypothetical and say yes for certain without knowing exactly what the actual expenditure is.
Yeah, okay, well, the reason I'm wondering is, for Canby Utility, just recently, I think it's federal, new mandate to get these forever chemicals, PFAS, out of the water, okay? We don't even know how much is in there yet. So we've got to do tests there. I don't know, is that going to mean we got to change or update the water treatment plant? And if so, by how much? So those kind of things can happen. And I just want to make sure that we don't get caught up short if that does happen.
If it's a new regulatory requirement, I'm thinking that probably SDCs can't pay for
Okay, so
that.
this is not the place for that, okay?
Counselor Pat?
So it is 8:30.
I was just about to go there. We have 10 funds
It
left.
seems like we're kind of maybe mentally winding down.
Yep.
So I wasn't sure if maybe and the cemetery is usually a thing. So
We have 10 funds
do we
left.
wanna stop where we're at now and?
Well, I was gonna wait. Who does cemetery? You, Jerry?
Oh, this one is just the perpetual fund.
Oh, okay.
This one isn't the cemetery.
Okay.
Cause I don't see us getting through all the rest of this
No,
tonight.
I knew we weren't going to. Now, do we wanna talk about the parking lot a little bit from first meeting?
I'd like to digest the memo a little bit. We didn't get it very far in advance of this meeting.
My apologies, it took longer to pull together than I thought.
Yeah, I understand that.
I mean, come on, Eileen, you've been here for what, 3 days? Why aren't you on top of this?
Yeah, I'd like to wait till next.
So do we wanna recess now?
Yes.
And pick up June 1st, next Thursday?
Yes,
Okay.
I agree.
Works good.
Okay?
Is that 7 PM?
6 p.m.
This one and last one, yep.
Does anybody have any final comments?
Well, next Thursday is First Thursday, and there's a big event at the fairgrounds, so maybe not exactly an ideal day for a meeting, but.
What's happening at the fairgrounds?
Kickoff for Hair Fest, they're inviting business owners to come, and then later there's a kickoff event after that, but it's a big First Thursday event downtown too.
We have advertised already in advance because of comments at the first
Yeah,
meeting
we
that
already
you wanted to have an earmark on that particular day. So it's been advertised.
And time is of the essence to get it approved too, right?
Yep.
So-
Yeah, we have to have it approved by a certain time by statute, so. We do have new parking lot items added tonight.
Yes.
Can we get those maybe to add it to, so we can talk about all of the parking lot stuff next week?
Okay.
Perfect.
And we have a lot less items that were put in the parking lot from this one, so it shouldn't be as hard to add them in, so, okay.
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 Motion to adjourn?
No, we're recessed.
So moved.
We have to make a motion now?
The chair just always.
Oh, yeah.
Recess.
Remarkable authority.
Ta-da.